Welcome to a brand new episode of Live from the Poolhouse. We are live from said Poolhouse. I am, of course, one of your hosts. My name is T.L. Foster, and I love Thanksgiving, and I'm going to explain, because I feel really weird saying I love Thanksgiving. And I want to introduce my co-host, Sonya, and this is why I feel really weird. Like, it sucks. I guess we'll get into it as we go.
Yeah.
Like, it sucks to be like, I love Thanksgiving, and then it's like, oh, and then also my First Nations podcast partner. How do you feel about this really shitty holiday?
No, I was gonna introduce myself with the Addams Family quote, going like, "How? My name is Sonya, a Chippewa mate." I just realized, but when I was looking through this episode, I was like, "Oh crap, it's this one." No. Well, we should introduce our guest first before we get into this stuff. That other voice you hear.
Yes. So we are joined by one of my favorite people on the internet. I'm going to let him do his full introduction. Sir, can you please introduce yourself and where people know you from?
Oh, hey. Thanks for the reintroduction again. I'm still thrown by that actual intro that just happened. But yeah, I'm Emmit Watkins Jr. Y'all might know me from if you're in the Kind of Funny community. I rapped one time and got a sash because of it. I'm just really loud on Twitter. Love video games, love hip hop, love Fresh Prince. So glad to be on the podcast, and I appreciate y'all inviting me on. So yeah, I'm ready to crack into this turkey.
So before we spend this whole episode apologizing to Sonya for
this is the Our Bad Sonya cast.
Look, we didn't. I
mean, it's gonna be weird.
Yeah, me and Emmit didn't ask to be here. we were brought here against our will, or our ancestors were. But yeah, so Emmit, what's your history with the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air?
Well, it's a show I watched a lot growing up. As someone who watched a lot of Nickelodeon, once it was, I guess, past 10 or 11 p.m., this is the type of stuff that would come on, and I really loved the show. It's one of the first times I got familiar with Will Smith, and it was really cool just to see, because there were a lot of Black culture stuff that I knew from my parents, where it was like Color Purple and stuff like that was on BET reruns, and just typical things like that. But for Bel-Air, it was really cool to see. Of course, the affluent Black family was something that was rare for me, even early 2000s when I was watching the show.
Right.
But just having that contrasted with the liveliness of Will Smith and how he could be goofy and silly, but still be like, quote unquote, from the hood. I was like, okay, so you can be in both lanes, because I always thought it was a choice up until then. Right.
I think it's a little bit different because we're both from the South, right? Like, you're from Georgia, I'm from Florida. So we're
born in Augusta, for Christ's sake.
Well, my family's originally from Fort Gaines. So
wow.
Yeah, but I think it's also really important to see a show because Uncle Phil is from the country. We talked about this previously, so you tested we talked about it before. But seeing the show that shows different Black people, because I don't think a lot of people who may have watched this show don't realize we are all not a monolith. There's how we grow up is how things are different. Like I said, I live in Jacksonville, Florida, which is very much a port town. But again, my family's from Fort Gaines, dirt road.
Yep.
It's different. There's a difference in how Black people react to stuff, what Black culture is, what even this episode is, what a Thanksgiving is. Because I'm going to probably talk about food at Thanksgiving. When I explain it, people are going to be like, "That is gross." But I'm going to let you know right now, I'm already planning to learn how to make chitlins this year. So don't even.
Well,
see, there it is.
I hope you're cooking it outside.
That's the fun thing. We'll get into it. But no, yeah. I mean I think it is very important to see different Black people. It's the reason why I think shows like My Wife and Kids is very important, where it was a middle class Black family, or the Hughleys, stuff like that. Where you're able to see a different look into the Black family dynamic in these sitcom roles because it gives you more of a reference of your own life. And like, okay, yeah, I can see where I get some of this stuff at. Like, I watch the show and I'm like, I can see myself being Carlton, or I can see myself being Will, or I see myself being Jazz. Like, you can see those things.
Yes, indeed.
Mm-hmm. It's one of my favorite parts of the show. And we get to meet like a new part of their family, which also adds a new dynamic to that relationship. But yeah, like it's pretty cool. We'll get into the episode. Yeah.
All right. So yeah, Sonya, what episode is this?
So we are watching episode 12, Talking Turkey, which was directed by Jeff Melman and was written by Cheryl Gard. Cheryl would go on to write. Well, she previously wrote for A Different World, 8 episodes. She wrote for Designing Women, and she'll write for Hanging with Mr. Cooper, 1 episode.
I love that show so much. It's a really good show. I love Hanging with Mr. Cooper.
That is such a small blip in my head, but I understand.
Oh yeah, it's me too. I did like it though back then. And this episode first aired November 19th, 1990, and this episode is about the American Thanksgiving.
Yeah, specifying.
So one thing I wanted to mention at the beginning of this episode, Thanksgiving in Canada is a bit different than in America. Our Thanksgiving is in October, and it's really tied to the harvest. We don't really have that Pilgrim Rock sort of thing that comes up. So we start this episode with the story of American Thanksgiving, with Geoffrey saying that the Indians invited the Pilgrims to share in the first Thanksgiving. No reference to what tribe, but I can assume like it's probably the Chippewa.
Yeah. So yeah, let me for those. Can we? I mean, because we have the wonderful Sonya on our podcast, we do have a lot of Canadian listeners. So here's the story that was fed to us.
Yeah.
as we were growing up, that the Pilgrims and the indigenous people, they were living together, but at strife because the Pilgrims were coming for religious freedom and just landed on a continent that was already had people there, but they felt like they should be able to be there. And there was like a really harsh winter, and the indigenous people taught them how to make corn. So at the first Thanksgiving, the Pilgrims and the Native Americans got together, and then they ate corn and food together, and that's what Thanksgiving was. Not talking about history of indigenous genocide that this country is founded on, not talking about the Trail of Tears, not talking about the asshole who my city is named after, who made it a mission of his life to kill Native Americans. Not talking about all of that, but I think especially, and Emmit, you can definitely speak on this as well. Being a black person with Thanksgiving, to me it's never been about that history. To me, it's always just been like, it's literally like a family reunion. Like it's the time where I will see cousins I haven't seen in months, and we go to a place, and like that's what Thanksgiving is to me, is seeing family and that connection of family. And that's what I think it's very important. Not like, again, I literally do not give a shit about Pilgrim or Founding Fathers bullshit whatsoever. But the family aspect is what's very important to me about that.
Yeah, I can reflect that a lot, because I agree with you. A lot of the stuff about the origins and the misconstrued origins of Thanksgiving, a lot of that stuff is stuff that's just fed to me through grade school, and you draw your hand turkeys and they call it a day, and they never mind, or they never think to add in all the real stuff that happened there. But other than all the stuff, other than all the things that have happened there, I've always appreciated both Thanksgiving and Christmas. I kind of conflate those two because they're so close in time for Americans, at least. November and December. That's just a family get together time. It's similar to this year. People were like, we're really we shouldn't be celebrating 4th of July anyway, but we're really not celebrating this year. And everybody was like, hey, if you see me with a plate on the 4th, we're just chilling. This ain't for any specific reason. And so that's kind of how I always felt for Thanksgiving, where for at least my family, I'm sure a lot of black families as well, having a reason to all come together, all get together, all hang out and just gather for anything is always a good thing. And you put something on the calendar and you give us all time off work for it, you're gonna take advantage of that. So that's just another thing, similar to like a wedding or sometimes baby showers and stuff like that. Any reason you got for everybody to come together, we're gonna take it, and that was just another one. And sometimes you make food.
Right. Real quick.
And is Thanksgiving a Black Friday thing?
Oh,
too?
that's
that's the only reason I know.
That's
what
a whole.
Thanksgiving
That's a whole
is.
different. Yeah, Black Friday's a whole different other thing. So the thing with Thanksgiving is because it's so tied to Christmas, and for you guys. I'm going to take this out. My phone died, so my cameras. I'm going to fix it in a moment.
Oh, okay.
But I'm going to say my thing, and I'm going to bounce so I can get my charger.
No problem.
But the thing with so 3, 2, 1. All right. So the thing with Black Friday is like we love capitalism so much in America that it was a joke originally. So when I was growing up, Black Friday wasn't a thing. Like people were just like, oh yeah, I think the stores will open up, on Fridays, and we'll go and do the store. And then like as I got older, people started to like actually like camp out the day. It would be like they would camp out the day after Thanksgiving, and then they would all do that there. And then it just got more buck wild. And what was wild was like as I started working in the retail space, that's when it got even weirder, because like I was working at a Home Depot, and I remember like, oh, you have to be working on Thanksgiving. I was like, well, I have family. It's like, yeah, but people are going to be here at Thanksgiving night. And I was like, what? And that's like when they started doing like the 7:00 shoppers, like on a Thanksgiving day, and then going into Black Friday. So it's just a hot mess. Like Black Friday, not a huge fan of it.
Yeah.
I honestly just go like order online, especially now. There's no excuse now.
That's all I've done for the last like 4 years. Just order online.
Well, it's becoming a thing in Canada more so because people would have back in the day before Canada had its own Black Friday sales, people would drive to the States just to go buy stuff. Like I have friends who do that, and it's just like, I don't really need a 60. I don't want to die for a 60-inch TV. So it's just like I don't really, and I find that like the consumerism side is always something that is really bothersome to me, just because of the like, do you really need that PS4 right now and stuff like that? I know it's probably just like the idea of like Christmas shopping and stuff like that, but it's still kind of like. But I like anytime turkey is involved in anything, I am there for it. Like because I grew up a little bit poor, and Thanksgiving and Christmas were the only times we would have like a hardcore dinner like that, and so like being able to just hang out with my grandparents and my parents and stuff myself full of turkey was the best time. So I love Thanksgiving. I still do. Like it's a little bit different in Canada because it's right before Halloween, but it is such a great time. I love being an adult now because I can have turkey whenever I want. So
that is the
really,
vibe.
really good. That's one of my favorite things to do. And I still love turkey. Turkey is my favorite. But one thing I wanted to mention at the start of this episode, like Geoffrey is telling the story of the first Thanksgiving, and I love how Will comes in singing the Humpty Dance.
Oh yeah,
I love that song so much. He's like, do the Humpty Hump. So,
just aggressively dancing
so
too.
I'm like, just singing along to it in his mind too. Like this season, they tend to have more real music that they're using, and it cuts off later in later seasons, but yeah, like it's just the time capsule of music is just amazing to me. I just love it. Like I want to make a playlist of all the songs they mentioned in the first season just so I can listen to it.
And it's crazy because it's crazy you said at the top this was originally aired in 1990. It did not feel like that because when I watched it here, it didn't feel like it was 1990. I knew it was 90s, but I was thinking, okay, 899, something like that. Like it feels like late 90s because it still feels just a little bit contemporary here and there. But man, this show ages very, very well in a way that I really just didn't realize until watching it. I think it's been maybe a couple of years since I've watched an episode of Fresh Prince, but when I was a kid, I could have thought that was recorded 5 years earlier rather than 10.
Right. Well,
yeah, it's pretty timeless.
Yeah, when I first watched the show, and we've seen more episodes, like, you know, in the future, with just me and Sonya, like, when you start watching the show, it's really hard to stop. Like, we watch, you know, you watch more episodes, and like, I didn't realize that 93 was an episode. Like, this was like, they're like, oh yeah, he graduated, like, he's in college in 1993, and I'm like, I could have sworn that was, like, it felt like maybe it was like 96, 97, like,
yeah,
like this. I can't believe that this show ended so early. So that, yeah, it doesn't feel like a 1990s show at all. But like Sonya said, the playlist, and if you are subscribed to the $10 level, you can get a playlist that I will make for you on Spotify that will have a lot of these 90s hits on there. But it's
it's like a sexy mixtape.
It makes it so easy because it is such a timestamp. And then, like I said, I'm a huge hip hop head, right? And especially like early 90s hip hop. Love that. And it's like, I don't know, like the Humpty Dance, like it's such a very specific thing because it's such like San Francisco like fizzle style. Like that's not replicated and it's not chronicled as well. And that's like such a thing where it's like, yeah, this is dope. Like, I'm glad that they're showing like all aspects of the hip hop and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's my favorite thing about Will, like, because he doesn't listen to he listens to a lot of different things, like a lot of different music. Like my sister has made like a playlist of like some of the lesser known songs that play in the show. Like there's a scene, I think in season 2, I can't remember the name of the song, but like my sister played it in the car, and I'm like, oh my god, that's a song from Fresh Prince. I didn't know it was a real song. Or there's a scene where Will gets a car and he's playing OPP in the car, and like I just love that. It's like it's just a good time capsule of great music that this kid would be listening to, both popular and kind of like something you'd imagine jazz had shown him. So it's really cool to me. I just love that. So speaking of family, when we hear that Will's mother is coming for Thanksgiving, after being convinced to take the free ticket from Aunt Viv. And we hear that Phil that Will gets his tendency to tease Phil up from his mother Vi, who once called him Bigfoot, and which he thinks is stupid because no one knows what Bigfoot looks like. So I just love that joke. But I just wanted to bring up too, Bigfoot is a big part of indigenous culture. Bigfoot is called Sabe in indigenous, in specifically Ojibwe culture, and Sabe is the guardian between the spirit world and the real world. And so the reason why, it was told to me by an elder that the reason why they can't find like a Bigfoot or a Sabe or a Sasquatch is because Sabe lives in both worlds. He can disappear between them at will. So that's why it's so hard to find him. And so yeah, it was really interesting to me, like that whole idea, because like I was gonna do a documentary on a series of Bigfoot sightings in my hometown around my grandma's community. My grandma's community is a dry reserve, which means there's no booze allowed. But the nearest town, which is my hometown of Grand Rapids, has a liquor store. So people would drive from my grandma's community to my community and back to get booze. And the reason why I didn't end up doing this documentary is every story started with, well, we were drunk when we saw this guy, or we were hiding booze in the woods after getting drunk and we saw this hairy dude. So I was just like, your story doesn't really have a lot of credibility, but it was a good story. I'm like, the Bigfoot sightings, like you see more Bigfoot sightings in the northern Manitoba. So I really want to do a documentary.
No, that's a lot cooler than like our Bigfoot experts are always like skinny white dudes who are like that, like what you're
on the History Channel,
right? Like what you're explaining is like a way cooler take on like the Bigfoot mythology. Like that's badass. Like I want to know more of that than like, oh yeah, it's like, you know, it's the missing link out there. It's like, well, That sucks. Like, nothing about that's cool.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh yeah, like it's pretty cool stuff. Like in the seven sacred teachings, I think he represents. What does Sabri represent? Truth, I think. So it's just like it's funny that he gets co-opted by other people. Like he gets co-opted by the white people who are like, we gotta get Bigfoot now. So
we gotta.
It's like no, he's been around for a while, so we gotta find him. He's out there. But it's just like it's really cute to me. That story. But I love that. Like I don't know if you guys had the same experience, but like I didn't. My family were very close. And whenever my grandma would come to visit, I would like run outside and get in front of their truck and like just to get to them quicker. So that scene of Will jumping over Geoffrey to get to the door before he does to see his mom was just like giving me total like memories of that of doing the same thing when I was a kid.
Yeah, I can relate to that feeling. I was very rarely the kid to get up and run to do anything for the most part. Like even I got to that because at a certain point you get to an age for Christmas Day, everyone runs to the tree. At a certain point, I just walked. That happened to me earlier than all of my other siblings and everything. So like, it's always where I love seeing my family, and it's been a while since I've actually gotten to see them because I've been working on a lot of holidays, but I always love seeing my family. I always love just talking with them, hanging out with them and everything. But it's never a thing that I'm like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. It's always oh yeah, you're here. And then in the middle of it, that's when I start appreciating it. And I'm like, yeah, this is great. I'm glad this is happening right now. So like I'm more of like when they're all like dancing in the scene that's coming up, that's more where I'm at, because at that point that's when I'm getting hype and I'm like, yeah, because I'm feeding off the energy of the room more than just like the moment, you know.
Yeah. No.
Like my mom used to do that. My mom is a very like stoic person in terms of like she doesn't really show emotion, except for the time like she's cried like 3 times in my life. Like once when I graduated kindergarten, once when I graduated high school, and once when I graduated university. So like they're all tied to successful things. But I remember I was away traveling in Bangladesh for like about a month and a little bit, and I surprised her by coming home early. So she just walks into the house and sees me, and she just runs and like falls to her knees because I was sitting on the floor and hugs me. And it was like one of those moments that I was like, wow, I didn't know this could happen. It was really pleasant. I just loved it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I love my family. I don't know if I was like very emotional when they came, because I usually was the traveler, and I've never been a huge fan of like other travelee. And then like, so the thing I've been coming to grips with lately is, especially like with family, I'm very introverted, and like I like I said, I love my family, but I'm not also like, I don't know, like we're close and I can be myself, but it's also like I can't at a certain amount, especially like, you know, growing up very nerdy was a thing. And it wasn't even like, because like the whole stigma was like, oh, you're not black enough. I was like, no, I've always been black. It's just that we have complete different interests at some point, especially like on my mom's side, because my mom, her family, like all the kids, for her, like her brothers and sisters are all either were not there or were much older. So like I only had like 2 cousins that were around the same age as I am, but their mom sucks, and they weren't like really great either. They were like really grimy, and it was just like, I'm like it was like I was just
not the
like,
vibe.
Yeah, I was just like, this is not my vibe. Until then when I moved to Alabama, like I started hanging out with cousins that were my age that we kind of clicked a lot more. So like I was close, but I would never do like the whole, oh, I'm gonna go run to go see them, because it was always like, but I did do this when my mom came. When I moved to Alabama, stayed with my dad. My mom came to my graduation. I did do that because I hadn't seen my mom for like, I think almost like 6 months or whatever, and it was just like, my mom was here. I've got to go be around her all the time, and I do that for my. I do that for my aunt Lavinia, who, Mom Lavinia and Uncle Larry, like they're like, I've never really knew my grandparents, but I used to live with them, and to me they're kind of like my grandparents because they're older than my mom and dad, and it's just like I do that for them because I love them to death.
Yeah, like I have, COVID is not really that harsh where I am right now. Like we had 6 new cases yesterday, and like nothing.
Man.
Well, 6 new cases today, so it's not like insane or anything because we're a small province. Yeah,
Hell, I would take double-digit cases at this.
Yeah.
Yeah. You guys live in the States. Yeah, it's kind of scary. But we recently got to spend my nephew's 5th birthday together. Like, we had to be outside and the adults wore masks, but we went to his birthday and, like, he hadn't seen me my nephew Porkchop hadn't seen me in person for about 2 months. And the second he saw me coming in, he just ran to me and like jumped into my arms, and it was like the most beautiful moment of my life, just because I'm like, oh, I missed you too. Don't hug me though. Don't get close to my mouth. And so, but it's so cool. I just love that, like, that feeling of little family things in this episode that are just like heartwarming. But yes, just to mention too, so we're introduced to Will's mom, Viola, or Vi. She's played by Vernee Watson, who's an American actress, author, voice artist, and acting coach. She's best known for playing Vi Smith on Fresh Prince and for playing Verna Jean Williams on Welcome Back, Kotter. She was also in Batman: The Mask of the Phantasm, which is pretty cool. I did not know that. And yeah, she was also in a really, really heartbreaking Duracell commercial in the 90s where like her she's watching her son who has a heart attack on the basketball court. It was like really horrifying. I'll link to you if I can find it. But it was really, really intense. I'm like, that's Will Smith's mom in that commercial. Oh my god. But we find one thing that was weird about this episode was it's revealed that Smith is the maiden name of Vivian and Vi. It's retconned later in the series, or Will's dad just took the last name, but Will's father, when we meet him in a few seasons, his last name
there's a possibility.
Smith. So I'm like, I don't know.
They have the same last name.
Possible, yeah, or he could have taken it, or because we find out like later, like that Vivian and her sisters are all like their maiden names are Smith. So yeah, but they could have had the same names too. I didn't think about that part. So.
Yeah.
But yeah. So there's this cute scene of. Like you had mentioned it, of them dancing to the song "Ain't Too Proud to Beg" by the Temptations.
Great.
I just love that
because
that is
totally like that vibe right there. That is totally like whenever I'm with my family, and because my parents put me onto a lot of just old school music, and so that's a perfect example right there. Well, a song usually is never something like the Temptations, but it's usually always because one of my uncles, he's a pastor, and every now and then. Because, like, you know, I've been dragged to church for a long time, so, like, I know everything. And every now and then, there's like, maybe 5 songs that if they come on, everything stops.
Yes.
And so, especially in that household where it's like, oh, that's one of the good ones. And then we all getting up and we're all turning up to that. And it just becomes a whole thing. And then even now, more contemporarily, we've lived in this house maybe 2 or 3 years, but when our cousins and everything came to this house for the first time, because all my family lives in Florida, I'm in Georgia, of course, so it was a big deal to do that 8-hour drive to come down here. I had a karaoke set up in the basement, which is right next to my room, and we were there for like a good 4 or 5 hours that night, just different song, just going through all the stuff that we know from childhood, and then they got to do their songs as well. And because at first I was like, I know I'm weird because I like karaoke and most of my family isn't into like that type of stuff, but I like performing, so I'm gonna hook this up and see who else wants to come down. And so the cousins came down, and I was like, all right, at least the cousins are doing this. And then they heard us from upstairs, and they came down to watch. And then soon enough, they were picking up the mic, too. And everybody was doing a song. And it was the most fun that I've had with my family in a long, long time. So, like, that moment right there, I thought about that moment for my family as well.
Yeah. No, yeah. And I mean, I definitely can, like... I really wish there was like a church episode. That's the one thing about the show. There's not really like a church episode because, like, boy, man, I had those stories like... You've never lived until you've had a Keith Franklin CD.
Bro.
Played in,
when you hear that, unrespect, disrespect, like, oh my God. that it's over. You hear that? It's like, oh man, this is our life for the next 5 minutes.
I remember being in the church choir, and my cousin, like, for our youth choir, learned how to key and write out stomp for us to do.
Oh.
And that was just like, I was like, yeah, I'm into it, like, because I love, like, Kurt Franklin stuff. It's just so much fun, and it's just like, yeah, this is fun thing. Like, this is like, not to get on my, like I said, not to divulge and get on my church soapbox. But that's why, like, I always get weird like when people are like, oh, church is so, like, one, they're like, oh, I had to go to church. I was like, how long is y'all church? An hour? I wish. Like, our church is like an hour. That's the start of church. But again, it's white churches are, for the most part, are so dour, and it's always like, oh, here's the sad part. Like a black church, it's a party, and it's like
turning up.
It's celebrating, and then the prayer is about celebration, and here's why life is great, and da 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 da. Like, I've never, like, the reason why, like, stuff like Passion of Christ doesn't do anything for me, because, like, I never understood the sad Christ stuff, because, like,
sad
Christ is, well, I mean, that's what it is. Like, that's how I look at it. Like, because, like, we're taught, like, in black churches, you're taught, and I think it actually comes back from using religion when you're in slavery, when you're in a bondage situation, like, but you're taught that
it's the God good thing in the distance to get to.
Yeah, God, there is a joy in God. Jesus being here, Jesus going through all this stuff, there is a joy in that. And we shouldn't be looking at the depressedness, we should be looking at the joy. And so that's why you get, like, was why it's always fun to have, like, family around and, like, yeah, we'll sing that, or stand. That child, you just stand, like,
bro,
like,
bro,
and, like, all that stuff, like, and you just, like, when you hear it, you're just like, yeah, and, like, the whole family gets it, and it's, like I said, it's one of the few times I've cried is just been, like, at a choir thing, and just, like, hearing that stuff, like you said, it's just emotionally resonates with me. Like, I just
so
broke down crying, and it was just, like, a lot.
It's good stuff. So yeah.
No. Well, it reminds me of, like that was the only reason I felt so connected to black culture, because a lot of the church stuff that we do as Native people is a lot different than what white people will do. I remember my ex-boyfriend, who was white, came to my grandmother's funeral, and he did not understand the concept of us having a 3-day wake with the funeral on the 3rd day. Like, that's a thing we do, and every night everybody eats for like 2 hours, and we tell stories about our grandparents, and we laugh about things. Like, it's a sad event, but it's really, really fun just to get together and meet with the people you may not have seen for a very long time. And, like, it's something that, like especially with I remember when the biggest thing that confused him about the funeral was the funeral, what did they call the car? The hearse? The hearse left, like, after they dropped off the body, and he's like, what the hell, like, aren't they gonna stay here and transport the body? And I was like, what? No. And so somebody brought their truck, and that's how we transported it to the grave. And, like, it was just like it's just cool to see little things in the show that remind me of, like, how my own family is. Like, for us, it wasn't the Temptations, but it was, like, country music that everybody would freak out for. Like, you play Ring of Fire by Johnny Cash at any wedding, people are gonna freak right out. And so, like, it's just cool. Like, I remember my mom is obsessed with John Fogerty, who is the lead singer of Creedence Clearwater Revival. And I remember, so, like, John Fogerty is basically the Jesus of Native people. Like, if you go to a John Fogerty concert in Winnipeg, you'll see Native people my parents' age who are all there. And I remember once my friend was telling me about this old Native guy who ran up and down the stairs during John singing The Old Man Down the Road. He just kept running up and down the stairs in excitement, and it's just, like, so cool to, like, see the effect that music has on people, because I don't think the same thing happens to most white families. Like, I'm a huge fan of U2, And they're the whitest people alive, but still, like, there's a difference in the way their music is played and how it connects with people. Because I remember my mom is not even that big of a fan, but when she went to the U2 concert with me, she started crying during certain songs just because it was so powerful. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I just love music. Sorry, we can go on.
Music's great.
TL was talking about having a rap history podcast. I should just do one on U2 and just start it every episode with like, people say U2 is just a band. So.
Well, what's weird is like, cause you definitely brought up like the connection with music. The thing that's really wild to me now is a lot of stuff that I grew up on is like I'm getting really weirdly nostalgic for. So like, I've been listening to a lot of like New Jack Swing, and then like it's so weird. It's like when white people, what is New Jack Swing like? You know, Boys to Men, I'll Be Sure, Tiffany Campbell, like that stuff. And they're like,
yeah, man.
I don't know. Like that's always the thing. Is like people are like, I don't know about Tiffany Campbell. It's like, have you seen a Goofy movie? Powerline. Yeah, that's just Tiffany Campbell. It's not even like hidden. That's just Tiffy Campbell.
Pretty much.
That's the reason why those songs like slap. Like they're
man.
so good. But that's the thing. It's like, and I mean we talked about. We're going to talk about it. Or we talked about it. Like the last episode with the basketball where they're dancing to James Brown, and it's just like yeah, I'm Uncle Phil now. Like I'm someone like oh yeah, this listening to Candy Girl by freaking New Edition. Like no, that's just the jam. And then they're like oh, that song was 25 years. Well, actually now Candy Girl is like 35 years old. Like, that song's old as crap.
Oh my god!
To think I only heard that in like Love and Basketball, and that's how I know that song. Oh boy.
Well, I remember somebody called No Diggity by Blackstreet the song from Pitch Perfect. And I was like,
that is gentrification at its finest right there.
That's like when someone said, oh, isn't Kendrick the guy from the Taylor Swift song? I wanted to cry. Oh, man.
Well, it's sad because you want to know who got me into Blackstreet when I was a kid? The Backstreet Boys. That's who got me.
Did you mistype one of their songs?
Like, no. Okay, so what happened was there was so the Backstreet Boys were doing some sort of thing on MTV like a million years ago where they were talking about the music that they liked, and one of the songs that I think it was AJ or it was Kevin who said that they really really liked the song by Blackstreet called "No Diggity," and I listened to it and I was like, this is a kick-ass song. So I immediately downloaded it on LimeWire or whatever the thing was, Kazaa probably. And it was bizarre because it's like all this music I ended up getting into when I was a kid was because of like the crap bands I liked. But it was so good. I love that song.
So this is why I always get weirded out. Hey, welcome to our music podcast. Sorry, but this is the perfect outlet for me to spew things that are in my head. It's so perfect that it was brought up because, like, people give Justin Timberlake a lot. I love Justin Timberlake. I want to stress that first. But like, oh, he like bottles stuff over there, like all these like New Jack Swing black artists. Is like, but you have to realize like the guy who produced them, that whole scene that produced like them, but New Kids on the Block, like that guy originally produced New Edition. Like New Kids on the Block is just white New Edition, right? So that's the reason like I love boy band music because it is a subset of R&B. It's just whitewashed R&B, and then there are people who do it better. Like I'm sorry, Backstreet Boy fans, NSYNC is just better. I don't make these rules.
Oh my god, no!
It's just
I don't have an opinion on that.
God, no.
There was only one VHS tape that I had from McDonald's with the performance on it, and can't say it was in sync. So that's the most of my bias.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Well, the one thing I will say about NSYNC is that the wrong person broke through. It should have been JC, not Justin, who ended up having the solo career because he was the most talented one. So, like, even though I do love Justin's first album, like, is really really good, but yeah, like it's like Backstreet Boys. Man, for life. Like, I would get a tattoo of them. Well, no, probably it wouldn't go that far. But, like, I was obsessed with them when I was, like, 13.
I honestly think that the actual break between Backstreet Boys and NSYNC is broke by gender. Here's why I say that. Most women I know who are my age or older are Backstreet Boys fans. And usually people who are NSYNC fans are usually dudes or, like, people who would have been, like 8, 9, like who are a little bit younger than I am, like before it broke off to like O-Town and all the other like all those other
98
lesser
degrees.
Yeah, there are lesser groups, but I do think it does like for the most part fall under gender lines. I do think that more women, like I said, don't get me wrong, I know a lot about Backstreet Boys and I still rock with Backstreet Boys. Don't get it twisted. I just like NSYNC better. I don't know why.
Well, the funniest thing though is back in the day, like you were one or the other. Like you were never both. And I remember like it was a bigger divide than the East Coast West Coast thing. Like
no one got shot
now,
over
if you say it, like well, they might have. Like I once got into a fight with an NSYNC fan, but like I was a teenager. Anyway, but it's really funny though because I remember when NSYNC did that kick-ass performance at the VMAs with Britney Spears once. Like I remember I was like jamming to it like horribly, and I was like, man, I wish Backstreet Boys could do a cool show like this, and I felt like such a traitor. Like because like NSYNC did some really cool like that VMA performance with the TV screens with their heads. It was so cool, and like I always wish that, like Backstreet Boys were more talented, but NSYNC always had cooler dancing and cooler shows. Yeah. And I'm just like, I wish. Yeah, I mean,
I'm definitely bigger. Like because the singing was whatever. It's style. I am style over substance guy, and yeah, NSYNC is 100% style. It's 100% style.
Mm-hmm. Well, Backstreet Boys actually influenced my sci-fi look for my films, because there's a video for Larger Than Life that's set in a futuristic setting, and the way I designed my my interstellar crafts was largely based on the one Kevin flies. So it's really stupid. I'm just like, man, no. I hope Toronto International Film Festival doesn't like cut this audio when I make my first sci-fi film. It's like it's largely inspired by the Backstreet Boys. But
hey man, inspiration comes from the darndest places. But yeah. God.
But I wanted to ask you guys, did you have a bossy parent or auntie?
I think every family does. Mine is the aunt that lived in Atlanta, and it would frustrate me all the time when we would go over there because she had the big house, and her and her husband were also like, my parents are military. Her husband was military as well. And she had sons that were around me and my sister's age, so like we're kind of like the closest ones. And my mom is like really laid back and chill. Like mom, it takes a lot for mom to get upset, except for when she's around her, and I hate it. I hate it because like my mom would be a completely different person. Me and my sister would call her out on it. She would be like a completely different person because my aunt was very bossy. She's the one who does like a lot of the cooking. Not great, by the way. But she would tell people like, oh, hey, here's how you should do it, and blah, 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 blah. And like, it would always frustrate me, and I would always hate going there. She was the worst.
Yeah, it's weird because like, thinking about it right now, I don't recall any one specific family member being like the mean aunt or anything like that. But I feel like this is a thing for a lot of black families, maybe not just mine. But as soon as you go around other people, your parents are suddenly the most strict people in the world. Like, that's how it was. Because whenever we'd go there, like, God forbid, if there's two cousins and me in the room when a vase breaks or something like that, then my mom's thinking it's me, their mom's thinking it's them. Like, they are instantly blocking off their kid as the one who's the worst person. So that's one thing I always disliked, where we can have fun and everything, but if anything goes wrong, we're all getting the harshest punishment, like each of us individually. And so I never did like that. So like that's the one thing I'd say, where all my all my family, they're all going to be kind of strict to whatever their child is, but my auntie they're always super generous with me. All my relatives are super generous with me, grandmas as well. I lost both my grandmas before like high school, so that's only so long. But like, yeah, all that was great. But yeah, that's just the vibe there. That might be the case for a lot of people though.
I was really brought up lazy because I was spoiled like really badly because I was the first grandchild and I was the first child of my parents, and my mom was really really mistreated by my dad's extended family just because they didn't want him to get married, and when I came along, like they were always trying to usurp her power as my mother by saying like, oh, you're doing this wrong, oh, you're gonna give that baby a rash, oh, you're gonna like, and so it like I didn't really have a close relationship with my family on that side just because they were always like trying to convince me that my mom was like subpar and like all this horrible stuff. So like I was really close to a person I do consider my auntie, who was my mom's cousin on her side. So yeah, like I was close to them, but like the bossiest person in my family was my grandmother. And not because she was like strict or anything, but just because she was overprotective as hell. Like she was always like, oh yeah, Sonya can't have fish in her can't have bones in her fish or she'll kill herself, or Sonya can't have candy, she'll swallow it and die and stuff. Like she had no faith in me, but my grandma was the type of person who was everybody was terrified of her. So like the chief of her home community was a guy that was the same age as my mother, and the only person he would like concede to was my grandmother. So when my grandma came into the boardroom, she'd be like, Clarence, get me some tissue paper, I need some, and he'd run and go get it. And so like Vi in this episode reminds me a lot of my grandmother, because my grandma would do this type of thing where she'd order people around, but it would never be me, because she'd be like, oh yeah, like I can do that, Sonya, I'll wash the dishes, I'll like sweep the floor, you won't do it right. So it's just like it's just like
no, my dad is I love my dad to death, and me and my dad, I think vibe wise we're kind of similar, except my dad is extremely an alpha, and I'm not. I am like very much like chill. I get my dad from my mom, but my dad is the third youngest in his side of the family. He might as well have just been the boss. I don't know where it comes from. He's a military guy and everything like that. But yeah, when stuff gets done, like it's like, oh, hey, artist, what do we do? This is what you blah 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 blah. And like, he always runs stuff, and it's always weird to me. And in that case, I'm with Emmit. My dad, there's literally nothing he can do. I remember got in trouble once, and then my dad was like talking about something like, yeah, well, one of my cousins got arrested. He's like, yeah, well, at least he's out there doing something. Look what Travis is doing. I'm like,
oh my god,
I'm not getting
that
arrested.
is so. Dude, every time, like I will make like the smallest. Like I remember I did something real. I think one of the worst things I did growing up as a kid was I either lost or just didn't do a PowerPoint or something, and instead of just saying that, I said, "Oh yeah, it's corrupted or something," because I knew my parents didn't know technology, still don't for the most part. Right. So once that eventually got played out and the teacher got involved and was like, "Oh yeah, I've looked, it's not there." So once that all blew up in my face, I was like the worst person in the world for a while, and then later on, one of my cousins like got kicked out of college for having weed on campus, and then I remember them saying something along the lines of like, "Oh well, EJ's done some stuff too." So they call me EJ at home because I'm in the junior, and they're like, "EJ's done some stuff too," and I'm like, "Dude, I haven't brought drugs into a facility. Like
these aren't equivalent. You can't just say, oh, they've done this." It's like. Jail. I'm not jail. Like what?
Yeah. Like there's a gradient there, but that's how it is. But yeah, Vi was definitely pretty strict on Will, even though he's done pretty well for himself too.
Right.
Well, I just love that, like, because my parents, like, I don't know if you guys had corporal punishment when you were kids, but my parents never hit me. There was always that threat, that thing where like, they would never hit you, but you were scared of them. So, like, so I love that scene where, Vi asks them to clear the table, and, like, Carlton laughs at her, and, like, she just gets angry for a second. She's like, do I look like I'm joking? And Will immediately smartens up and is like, not to me, and grabs all the stuff and, like, leaves. Like, I would have done that too, like, in terms of, like, the person I was most afraid of my parents was probably my mother. But when my dad got that, like, quiet, like, Sonya, you go do that type of thing, I would immediately do it. Because, like, the fear of not knowing what he would do was the reason why I do it in the first place. Like, and I'm like, what the heck would my dad do? He's like a pussycat, but still, like, it was like the fear of like, oh man, I don't want to wake the dragon or anything. So
no, I've got like,
there's some stories.
Yeah, there's so many stories. Like, it's like, it's funny, but it's not at the same point. Like, I came to this realization, like, in high school. If I have kids, like, I couldn't do that because I remember what I went through. I do think there's a better way of disciplining children. But, I mean, you learn how you learn, and how parents learn is how parents learn. I also think there's a gradient down, because, like, my stepdad used to tell me horror stories, like, when he was getting disciplined, and, like, he was like, oh, you ever heard of Cat and Nine Tails? Like, no,
oh my god! No
like,
way!
Yeah,
actually,
I was like, yeah, but I mean, like, they had to do stuff like get switches, and I've had to do that for grandmas. It's like, go get the switch, okay? Dude. Like, so
one
like,
of my go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying, like, so I do think there's a de-escalation, but have I gotten yes, and they were never great. So, like, to this day, oh, Dad. Yep, yes, sir. Let me go right ahead and do it. You don't have to ask me twice. Got you.
Like, I still got, like, because, like, much like you, I also had a little bit of corporal punishment here and there. Now, thankfully, I was the first of 3 children, so I was kind of the beta. So at a certain point, they got enough pre-alphas so they could have a full release with my little brother. So So, like, eventually they learned, and I think by the time high school came around, that wasn't happening much anymore for any of us, honestly. But, like, I remember being at, like, my cousin's house, because my cousin, one of my cousins lived with his grandmother and his aunt, and, like, if he did something horrible, then it would literally, because they had, like, almost a farmhouse. So if he messed anything up, it would be like, all right, go get the switch. And he'd literally have to go get the twig off the tree himself and walk back in the house with it. And I'm just like, I'm like, yo, that's like some psychological stuff. Like, that's just not fun. But, like, yeah, you know, the stuff that happened to me, it's like, you know, you deal with what you get. And much like you, Travis, I'm not planning on doing that at all for my kids. And, you know, that de-escalates down. But at a certain point, it's less about the physical stuff and more about, like, because my dad, I love my dad. He's a very kind soul and everything. His thing, he just doesn't have any patience. So he's the type where family road trip, we're at the drive-through, and he's like, all right, what do you want? You take longer than 5 seconds to say something. All right, come on, she's waiting. What you want? And it's like, all right, we don't need to. It's not that high stakes. But yeah, so I'm more always afraid of just, like, I just don't like being yelled at. I don't like escalation of much of any type, and yelling is the most common form of that. So, like, as soon as things turn to, like, angry shouting, I'm always like, okay, I don't want to be in this situation anymore. So I do anything to prevent things from escalating to that point. But luckily I haven't had it. The older he gets, the more mellow he gets, of course, and he still gets bouts of that every now and then. But nowadays, it's very well deserved if that ever does come up. And I don't know why I pointed with this lotion bottle in my hand, but
well, like, it's funny. Like, the biggest thing when I was a kid was I knew I would do stuff my mom told me not to do. And when I would mess up, I would immediately go like, oh my God, Mom's going to kill me. So one time I was playing with the wagon in the house, and we were not allowed to play with the wagon in the house, but I did. And I had my little sister on the wagon, and I was like zooming really fast down the hallway into our bedroom, and my sister fell off and hit her head. And my sister was doing that thing that little kids do where they're not sure if they're going to cry, but they're about to cry. And I'm like, oh God, mom's going to kill me. And so that was my immediate thought, that like my mom is going to like skin me alive. And so I said like to my sister, I was like, Carrie, watch me. And I run head first into the wall and knock myself out. And I come to with my mom slapping me, and she's like, what the hell did you do? So, because like I was always, like I never knew, like she would never do anything to me, so I don't know why I was so afraid, but like I would do stuff like that where like she'd tell me, Sonya, don't climb that tree, it won't support your weight. And I'm like, well, you can't tell me what to do, old woman. So I'd go climb the tree, and the tree couldn't support my weight, so I fell out of it and really scratched up my stomach. And my sister's like freaking out, and she's like, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? And I'm bleeding, and I'm like, don't tell mom. So the second we walk in, it's absolutely quiet, so she knows something immediately is up because we're quiet. And so I go to my room and I shut the door, and she's like, what's wrong? You guys are never this quiet. And I'm like, I'm fine, turning pale. And she sees like the stain on my shirt. She's like, what's wrong? She looks, and I'm like freaking out, and she like just runs me to the nursing station. So it's like, why was I such an idiot?
I mean, as a kid, you just dumb. Like I remember getting in trouble with my uncle. Like he had made a chocolate cake, and I don't know why. It was like a chocolate yellow cake. I don't know why, but for some reason, I decided to take my finger
and just go right in
and lick the icing off of the chocolate cake.
Yep.
And then lied about it. Well, Uncle was like, "You were literally the only person here." I don't know why. But like the stuff like my stepdad, like when I was younger, used to really had bad anger issues, and I think it's a lot of dealing with like he comes from a broken home, and he lived in a really bad part of Philadelphia, so I think there's like a lot of stuff that he had to go through. Like he's been doing therapy a lot lately, and that's one of the things. Like it was almost 10 years ago now. Like me and him just like sat down and had a conversation. Like we're really close now, and he was just like, "Hey, I just have to apologize, man. Like he was like, I was like very like rough and stuff like that, but like, I don't know what was going through, because like when I was younger, it wasn't really that bad. It was really when he was working as a truck driver, but I think it's a lot of like dealing with sleep deprived and then dealing with anger issues, because like I said, this is a guy, like he's the guy, like if you get an order wrong at Wendy's or the fries are cold, he's I'm gonna go back in the line and wait. Like I'm usually like, we'll just go. I'll do it. But that's my stepdad. But he, like I said, he kind of mellowed up as he got older. I think that's I think a lot of times too, what we have to kind of be conscious of, like especially, like a lot of times when your parents are younger, like it's easier for them to be more like lashing out and be upset. Because like, I couldn't imagine having a child at 20. As someone who's 33, I cannot imagine that. So like it is asking a lot for people. That's why like some of that people get that authoritativeness to them, because we put them in a position of you have to take care of this person, this human being, at such a young age, and that's the only way she can realize how to do it.
Yeah, learn as you go.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's one of the scenes I really love in this episode is that totally reminds me of me, because I wouldn't have known how to do it either. Where Vi calls the kids lazy because they don't know how to work a dishwasher, and like you can see Will in the background like just drying off the dishes or something. And I just love how Hillary doesn't even bother asking Vi how to do it. She's just like, here. So I just love because like it's really cute. Because like and then there's that whole scene where they're like, well, let's take them up, where Ashley's like, well, let's take them up to Geoffrey's room, he'll know what to do with them. And so it's just like, it was just so sweet to me that they like they're not malicious, they just don't know, and I just love that bit. It's so funny to me.
Yeah, that was really good. Yeah, that's another thing where I'd forgotten how much the class dynamics were played for laughs in this show. Because I think by the later seasons, everyone was more comfortable with each other, so they kind of tapped into other stuff. But like, yeah, that first season, it's a lot of, they're wealthy, he's not. Look at the comedy from that. And so it's interesting to see how, humble beginnings. And what was it? I think it was. Well, we'll get to it in the morning, Thanksgiving morning, when they find out they have to cook. But there's something there too I want to talk about. We'll wait until we get there.
Yeah, so this whole scene with Vi in the kitchen, like she gives when they're eating, she tells Geoffrey to have dessert and they'll clear the dishes. She meets the gardener and she tells the gardener to take the weekend off because it's Thanksgiving, and Vivian comes in and tells her like, oh, why'd you do that? Like, it's not your job to do that. And Will is trying to defend it by saying, oh yeah, the lawn can wait till next week, it'll be fine, and then freaks immediately out when he realizes his mom wants him to cut the lawn. And so and then there's this very, very beautiful conversation about how Vivian is raising her children and how Vi is kind of not nervous, but like she's trying to prevent Will from becoming like spoiled, basically. And that she didn't send Will out there to become spoiled. She sent him out there to get a better education and learn the value of like hard work and all that other stuff. And so it's really like, it really hurts Vivian's feelings, like that that her sister thinks that she's spoiling her children. And I always thought that was like such a sad thing, because I'm like, wouldn't you want your kids to have a easier time of things than you did personally? Because that's something that's a big thing in my family. Like, each successive generation has it a little bit easier than the previous one. Not just because they want to make it easier, because it's like, it's not fun to suffer. And it's like it becomes a bigger thing in later seasons when there's an episode where Ashley leaves her private school for a public school. And like Vivian and Phil tell her like, well, we just want the best for you. And Ashley tells them like, well, it's like, why is it so bad for me to go to a public school? You both went to public school. And like it's a big continuing conflict in the show about when you're struggling when you want to give your kids the best things, you forget about the good things you already had. And so I love that theme on this show of like remembering where you came from, but also realizing that you're in a position now to make things better for other people.
I don't know. It's
cool. I love that.
I mean, I think that is a huge thing. Like, because parents, you always want to do better. Want everything to be better for the next generation. But the stuff with Vi, especially Will with the mother lawn, man, that's some black parents.
That was me. Yeah,
black parents.
I was pushing that lawnmower, man.
I remember going to, whenever I go to my grandma's house with Dad. Oh yeah, Travis and Sean, they'll go and cut the yard. I want to play GameCube.
Yeah, like this is our vacation.
His GameCube.
Yeah.
Why I gotta get up and? You guys will get up and rake acorns. What? Like, but like that's what it was. But I mean, and I get it, because it is a form of like, hey, like, you have to remember where you come from and stuff like that. But also, I want to just play GameCube. I don't want to deal with any of this stuff.
That was so much the case. Like, and it'd be so, because like similar to how I was talking about how my parents would always be the hardest on me and their parents on them and all that stuff. It would also be whenever I'm visiting a cousin's house, that cousin would not be off the hook from their chores. Like, it would always, because like I said, that one cousin lived on like a farmhouse, so it'd be like, hey, make sure you go feed them cows before the end of the day. And so at some point we'd have to stop everything and be like, all right, come on, let's go out here. And then of course that led to its own antics where this is terrible and I don't recommend doing this, but I was like 12, so I didn't really think about it. But we fed the cows bread, and I was like, I forget what it was. I think like they thawed out like a cooler or something. So there was like a large block of ice that was thawing, and it was down to like a really small piece. And I was like, can we feed the cows the ice? Would they eat that? And so we started trying to like concoct a way to get the cows to eat the ice, and we tried to like wrap bread in it. And he just didn't eat the ice, so we just like gave up on it eventually. But like we were really trying to make that happen, and it's all because he had to go out there and feed them the regular cow food in the first place. So like, and then we didn't even think about they're eating the regular food, so they didn't want any more bread. I'm thinking about that now, like, God, we were idiots. But yeah, it's that's a similar thing where they always put the value of hard work into you, and especially for my dad, I had to mow the lawn like once or twice a month every month for like a good 5 years of my life. In the middle of there, when I was getting into those early teenage years, I would have to do that regularly, and now he just does it because it gives him an excuse to not be in the house and in retirement. But yeah, that was something I did all the time, and I hated it every time. Once I finally got like an MP3 player and some headphones, I was like, thank God, this is my podcast time. But before that, I dreaded that all the time.
It would suck because because one, dads are not jerks. Like, they will get you up early because, like, dude, cutting grass like at 1, 2 o'clock sucks. So they'll get you up early, but you're an idiot kid. You don't think, I don't want to wake up at 7 and go cut the grass. And then they'll always say, you better cut the grass now before it gets too hot.
Yep.
Like, and you have to go and cut the grass. Yeah. I remember being envious of people cutting the grass before I hit 13. And I hit 13, started cutting the grass, and I hated it every second of it. Which is weird. Like, now I get it, and I love cutting the grass. Like, I'm like being old now. It's like, you know what? Cutting the grass, it's good. It gives me time to think and reflect, and I don't have to worry about anything. I'll just go and do lawn stuff.
Yeah, lawn stuff does have its appeal now. Like, all that boring stuff, like freaking interior designing this room, which I've been doing for the last few days now. That has its own joy because it's just something simple. There's no like deadlines to worry about. It's just, go at your own pace and you go till it's done. It's like playing a perfect game of Snake, especially in the case of doing the lawn. It's just like, all right, hit all the corners and here we are.
It's like a beautiful little pattern. I love that too. But I love there's a scene where Vivian is pissed by what her sister says, so she goes to Phil and tells him, like, did you know what my sister said? She said that our kids are spoiled. And Phil is like, oh, like, surprise. Like, newsflash.
That's my mom.
And it's so funny to me because Phil tells her, well, I'm always saying that the kids should be doing more things around the house. And then Vivian immediately calls him on it by saying, like, that he often gives Hillary money for no reason other than she asks for it. And so it's just really cool because I love this idea of, like, again, the relationship between Vivian and Phil is so funny because, like, there's no maliciousness in their argument here. It's just that they're like they're both trying to portray themselves as the better parent, and I'm like, no, you both are spoiling your kids. And so it's just
that's
really
totally
funny to
that
me.
is literally the exact same dynamic in my house because my mom's always been, because I take for like my personality and everything, I get more from my mother, and she's always the more mellow one, the more softer on us for punishments and stuff. Like, she's always like the chill one, and my dad's always like the very strict, very aggressive, like, they need to learn this, so you got to be tough on them type parent. And he calls her out on it all the time. But it's also funny because, especially in the case of my sister, or for me, I think this is something I inherited with my dad because which is probably a bad habit, but I don't like asking for help, so I do everything I can to be self-sufficient. And I try not to, like, ask for any money. I try to make sure if I'm getting something, I have the means for it first, like all that stuff. My sister doesn't do that at all. She will not hesitate. She has her own stuff. She's self-sufficient as well. But if she needs it, she doesn't hesitate to ask. So she will gladly,
Same
like, that is just something that and then he totally will, like, shell out whatever money she needs if he has it. He'll do whatever he needs to if she asks. But I don't like to ask in the first place because I'm like, I don't want to burden them and all that stuff. So totally the exact same thing. And then the being soft on us is definitely something that they say my little brother's really got from, because my little brother is very much so a mama's boy, and it's kind of a result of that because he's the youngest kid. Pair that with the fact that, mom's already soft on us generally, it's like, okay, he's able to get away with some things that we weren't able to at his age. So, it is what it is on that front.
Exactly. But so in Vivian wakes the kids up at like, I can't remember the exact time, but really really early, and we see Will in his like really
I
really
want
cool
those pajamas.
which I really want. Yeah, like complete with the nightcap, baseball hat. That's so cool. And so she's telling them that they are going to cook the dinner, the Thanksgiving dinner for them, even though like I thought this was such a dumb idea in the first place, such a sitcom idea, because I'm like, these kids didn't even know what a dishwasher was. Like, how are they going to cook like dinner for everything? So I like Will takes control, but he doesn't know how to make turkey, and I just love that Vivian trying to be hard on them, and she like totally mimics her sister, and it's just hilarious to me how she's like saying like, you guys are getting a free ride in a fancy car, which Will messes up later when he says, you guys are getting a fancy ride in a free car.
Now, did you guys ever have to do the making dinner stuff? And I say that because when I was in Alabama, one of the things that my dad, I think one of the reasons why I started cooking was my dad used to make us make breakfast for everybody. Like, we were in high school age. So that's how I learned how to start cooking, was we all had to make breakfast for everybody. And like it taught me how to make grits and then eggs, and then once I got older, I was like, okay, well, let me branch off and do more stuff. But that's kind of what started me cooking in the first place, was doing breakfast at family. So did you guys ever have to do like make something for the family or whatnot?
Not so much, like more so now I just like cater in, like, because I'm like, I'm not making anything. And so my sister is more into doing that. Like, whenever my family is here, she and her boyfriend are often the ones cooking for us, which is pretty cool because my sister and her boyfriend are pretty good cooks. But like, meanwhile, I'm like now that I'm a little bit like have a little bit of money, I don't want any of my family to suffer unjustly and cook and stuff like that. And so I always love the idea of like some white cook at like the fanciest hotel in my city where we get our catering from making our Thanksgiving dinner. So it's just like, it's a little bit of reparations, even though I'm paying for it. But yeah, I didn't really do the cooking. My grandma did, and my mother as well. So like and they would just kick me out immediately if we tried to help them, because we just get in the way.
I feel you there. Yeah, I kind of had kind of different but kind of similar, where the fact that when it comes to like Thanksgiving, Christmas, any of like the big dinners, or even like 4th of July, that was such high stakes where you're not gonna put that in the hands of the kids.
That was a fool's errand on her behalf.
Yeah, exactly. Like that was never our responsibility. And I feel like my mom and my aunt and all the people who worked on all those Thanksgiving dinners, I feel like they took a certain amount of pride in that, because my family threw down for all that stuff. So like, it was always good. Even like whenever we go to my aunt's house, just for no particular reason, they're cooking, and it's always like above, like very far above average. So I'm like, this is always good. But I did learn how to cook less by being forced to, by like having to cook for the family or anything, and more so of because sometimes in our house it's just, all right, we can't order anything right now, and we don't feel like cooking, so every man for yourself tonight. And it's like, okay, so let's see what's in here. And then each of us eventually learned how to cook our own, especially my little brother. He picked that up. I think he picked it up faster because he saw me and my little sister having to do it. But like, eventually we'd learn how to use the stove. Of course, they'd help and everything, but we would like find things in the kitchen and be like, all right, can of salmon, box of pasta, let's do this. Like, and then just make different concoctions and stuff. And now it's gotten to the point where I don't think my sister likes to cook a lot. She doesn't do it all the time, but she likes to cook a lot. My little brother likes to cook a lot. I'm the only person who doesn't like it as a hobby as much, but every now and then I'll get obsessed on something and I'm like, okay, I'm making this for everyone because I'm really proud of this. Like when Greg Miller, kind of funny, we all know, he did that cooking show, and pasta carbonara, where Josh McCouga came on to show that recipe, and I kept watching that episode and I was like, you know what, I think I want to make this. bought all the stuff to make it, and I was like, this is really good. And so I made another batch for just the family to have, because I was like, I want y'all to try this, because I know y'all don't eat Italian food and stuff like that usually, but I'm really proud of this. It came out good, and sure enough, they were like, this is good. And so yeah, I think I cooked for my mom's anniversary, or my mom and dad's anniversary one time. But usually, yeah, cooking is more of a thing I do out of necessity rather than a habit thing.
I'm about to say that.
Yeah, me too. That's what
I guess I don't know. It's something about cooking, and it's like I love artistry, right? Like, yeah. I make beats that they're fine. Like the opening to this theme song, and I make beats, and like that to me, that's art. I love music. I love music art, and to me, cooking and baking, especially, baking is my true passion about all of it. It's just the artistry of doing it that I love, and I don't know. Like I get what you guys are saying, and absolutely, I wish it was just a necessity for me. But like, just like waking up, like, oh hey, I'm gonna cook today. Like that, it excites me. I'm like, all right, let me plan this out. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna make this shepherd pie like from scratch.
I think that's it right there. It's the fact that if I get up and I'm like, I'm gonna cook today, that is either a thing where I've cleared out the whole day for it. Like there's a good 3 to 4 hour chunk of I'm cooking and then I'm eating, where usually I don't think about food like that. Like if I'm thinking about food, it's I can't wait for this meal that's already gonna be ready. Like I can't wait to eat. If I'm anticipating it, I can't wait to eat. It's usually not me. I can't wait to make. I have to be in a very specific mood. So I think that's the main difference there, where having to make your food is like a thing I dread. Sometimes I don't like even going out to pick something up. Like, so it's more of a lazy thing, I guess you could say. But hey, man, either way, food's good in any case, unless it's being made by this family in Fresh Prince.
Oh, I always quote this episode. Like when my sister finally took over cooking for our family at Thanksgiving, I would help occasionally, because like they will never make me mashed potatoes. Like I have to make them myself, and so we quote this episode a lot when we're cooking together. Specifically, the dry stuffing scene where Will gives him the secret ingredient to making it better, which is mushroom soup. So he's like, pour, mix. And so we always do that at our Thanksgiving dinner. The part I love is how they don't know you. They don't know you have to do it for a long time, but like Geoffrey gets them a frozen turkey, and they don't wait to thaw it, and so it's just really. And the stakes are a little bit higher in this episode too, because Carlton invited his Mr. Fellows, his teacher that he wants to impress, to give him a better mark, because Mr. Fellows will be alone on Thanksgiving, so they invite him to dinner, and he's the one who finds the stuffing that is more mushroom soup than anything. It looks like risotto.
Yeah. It doesn't look good. None of that looked good.
Yeah. And I think this is the episode where the buns are super hard.
It looks like a hockey puck straight up that she had in her hand.
Well, and I just love the way Uncle Phil attempts to cut the turkey, where he just like hits it with the knife and it doesn't go anywhere. And there's that whole scene where he's like, this turkey's frozen inside, and Will is just like, well, I tried it and thought it. What do you want me to do? Sit on it all day? So no, but it was such a lesson in failure, because I'm like, why would you want to make these kids try to do something that
clearly not prepared for
it? What you were saying in terms of like it's a task that's too big for kids to handle, so you don't trust them to do it. And because Thanksgiving is such a big thing, this would be like a Christmas dinner for me, but it's I just love how cute it is, though, that they're not mad. They're just like laughing at the silliness of it. It's like, why did we do this? This
well, I felt like Vi knew what was going to happen. Like, if my parents were like, oh yeah, cook Thanksgiving dinner, I'm pretty sure like on the back burner, like, yeah, we're going to go to this Chinese restaurant anyway, because like
Christmas
we know
story
what's going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a very that was a dumb thing, but I think it was very endearing how it, like, the bless your heartness of it at the end, where they're just like, oh well, like, we'll just. And here's my thing: if that was my family, it would have been because like first off, we wouldn't be in a situation where the kids had to make the dinner in the first place, but like the idea of something getting messed up because we were like middle class, we were like lower middle class, so buying all the food is like a big deal. And if any of that is messed up, it's like, well, we're not getting another one. Like this all has to work the first time through. So that's why they all took so much pride and ownership of it. Cause it's like, yo, we got to make this happen the first time. Cause I remember when things were burnt or messed up, they were still on that table and you ate what you could.
Yeah. Well, we my favorite thing my grandma used to do is we used to have Christmas dinner at like 9 a.m. because she would cook the turkey overnight. And so like the whole house would smell like turkey, like warm turkey, and it's still one of my favorite memories when I smell turkey cooking. And it's such a good memory to me because like again, like when we'd have Christmas or Thanksgiving dinner, that would be one of the only times that we would have something so lavish. And so the reason why we would eat it throughout the day was because it was like so much food that we could eat it throughout the whole day. And it's one of my favorite memories too. And I'm like, yeah, if we messed up on something, like, because my dad is terrible at cooking potatoes. Like he is horrible at it. And so like if he messed up, like we still ate it. And we would still eat like everything. And it's just like just a cute memory. It's just like, and I love when Vi and Vivian go back into the kitchen to find something for everybody to eat after they messed up that badly. I like that she apologizes to Vivian, and like they just make it like just this cute sisterly relationship. Like that's why I love this show, because the family dynamics are so natural. Like, because it's not that Vi is trying to make Vivian feel bad. It's just that she's teasing her and like saying that she's trying too hard to be hard, and like it's just cute. The gentle ribbing is very endearing.
Yeah, it's very much like I said. To me, it just seems like a natural family thing. Like that's just family, right? And that's what that's what shines through. What's great about these actresses is like they just shine through as like this is just family. And this is how your family acts.
Sometimes it's messy, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but you love each other at the end of the day. That's really what it comes down to. And so you learn these hard truths in a hard way sometimes.
Even if you can't stand them, you love them.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that's the end of the episode. So yeah, like it's really sweet, and I just love. Though I never got dressed up for Thanksgiving dinner.
No, that's not weird. A thing. Yeah, the dress up for thing, like you dress up for Christmas. That's because you've done more Christmas stuff, and then like Emmit said, like. With church, with church, it's.
I had to think about it for a second because I was like, I'm not putting on a tie Christmas. Oh wait, but around 12 o'clock, you're putting on that tie.
Oh, but you are putting on that. You put on that tie if you don't want to. Like it's Christmas and Easter's the one. If you're gonna dress up for a food thing, it's always Easter, because at Easter you're gonna be dressed up to the nines.
Like you're going to church and then y'all eating after.
You probably got a brand new suit. I remember one Easter.
Every year, man. I had some great suits. I had so many different colors, man. I wish I was still that size.
One Easter, my dad had. So my dad was stationed in Georgia at the time, and I was living in Alabama. He came down, and he had brought my suits, and I had 3 suits. One was like this brown tan joint. It was pretty great. Other one was this black. It's this black with light blue pinstripe joint. That was pretty good. But the kicker, the main one, was a robin's egg blue suit with brown accents in the suit. Oh man, you couldn't tell me nothing. I was like, it was just so fly. I was just like,
dude. I had like a dark like navy blue suit with like gold accents, and I felt super badass because the high school that my dad coached at, football coach for like 20 years, that high school, the colors were blue and gold, and so I was like, yo, I am on point with the brands of all places. and I felt good on that. I had me I had like a white and green suit that I felt badass in. And orange has been my favorite color forever, so I was always trying to sneak in like, can I get this orange suit? Can I get this orange tie? So I have a million, like, I have... Actually, one of my favorite suit combinations is one I've worn recently, like since graduating high school, where it's just a black suit, but then I got myself a orange shirt, I got myself a black shirt and then orange tie, orange handkerchief, and all this other stuff, orange accents, and I was like, this is like, because black and orange are my two favorite colors, so I was like, yeah, right. This is my final form right here.
I'm just saying, look, next, if there ever is another Kind of Funny prom, I'm just saying.
Hey,
maybe I fall through. Maybe like suit game breaking it. I'm going to 2 weddings next year, and that's the whole thing. Is like I'm telling them because like one of them I'm going to be in the wedding, and I'm like, well, do you have a suit? He's like, well, no, we're just like you guys are to wear. It's like, don't say that because when I come in there and I just like set it aflame, don't be upset because you did not give me a dress code. Yeah, I'm going to come in there and do the thing.
Yeah. Fingers crossed that if Kind of Funny has some type of event next year, I'm hoping it's homecoming, because now, especially if there's no event this year, that would make a lot more sense.
Yes, it would.
So yeah, that's my wish. We'll see.
And like I said, I'm already suit and J looking up, because like the suit with the J's, like growing up, you get some Stacey Adams, great, right?
Yeah,
it gives you some nice shoes, great. But now being an adult. Now you got to get the kick. So I'm thinking going Luigi suit. So getting it's the navy blue, like kind of like almost like a royal blue, because it's like that purple kind of thing.
Yeah.
Green accents, obviously, because you got to get the Luigi part in there, and then green and purple Jordan 1s. And I'm like, that'd be the heat. It'd be the heat. It's so like
Oh, I want to get there's a suit place I walk by on my way to work every day, and I want to get a suit made because I want to look like the frickin' Riddler. Like, I want to get a green suit with like question marks on it, and like go to Comic-Con and that, and like just look amazing. Like, I want a tailored suit. I think I'll just get it in green to make it look nice, but it'll always be my Riddler suit.
That is definitely the move. Yeah. Oh man, suits are good, man. They suit us all so well.
Yes, that's a good point.
But
all right, but yeah, that's been this episode. Emmit, it's been great. Chopping it up, like, dude, it's actually really fun, and I'm glad that we were able to get a person of color guest. Like, I apologize to everyone out there that we didn't get one, up front, especially because like I think it's been very valuable to have you on. Podcast. It's been very fun.
Been very enriching for me as well.
Emmit, what would you like to plug? This is your time to plug what you would like, and what would you want people to be directed towards so they can see more of your great content.
Awesome. Well, appreciate that. So basically, a lot of stuff I do is for VGU.TV, which is the abbreviation, but also the URL. So just go there for anything I do. We do the Players Club podcast, which is I'm trying to hit once every Wednesday. We put out an episode on that. I got a couple backlogged episodes that I might cut through so we can get to, especially your episode that we recorded with you, Travis. So I'm going to put that out pretty soon. But yeah, we do that once a week. I stream every now and then. I think on Twitch I'm EJSpun61, just like my Twitter, except there's an underscore on it. And the main thing that's coming probably within the next, maybe not few weeks, my goal is to get it out before the end of the summer, and I have about a month and a half before that, but I'm doing Keeping It 100, which is a podcast that I did where I took my top 100 games and I went through one of those sorting things, and I just did that for 10 episodes straight. You can listen through all those episodes. I finished the sorting. I'm trying to do a finale where I go through that final list and talk about each game, but I don't want it to just be me reading a script for 2 hours. So I'm doing some more interesting things. Maybe some of that involves hip hop. Maybe some of that involves just comedic bits. But I'm trying to go, maybe not all out, but I'm trying to go further than usual. So that's going to take me a while, of course. I'm still in the middle of it. So we're still crossing fingers for at least the end of August, which will be the end of summer. But yeah, that's what I got coming out. So yeah, thanks for the opportunity to talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Sonya, do you have anything that you'd like to promote?
Just my Twitter, honey_child. I recently started a job, so I'm talking a lot about that. What else do I have to promote? Just watch that space. That's usually where I am. I don't know. This will probably be coming out after San Diego Comic-Con, but yeah, like I have a panel at that. It's all at home this week, or it's all at home this time, so we're not able to go to the Cheesecake Factory after the panel, so sad.
Just hold up your slices.
But next year... Yeah, it's like, well, there's no Cheesecake Factory in Canada, so I'll have to wait until next year.
I will send you a cheesecake. Don't go to the Cheesecake Family. I will mail you a cheesecake.
This is the...
But I want, like, the 40-page menu.
This is my first time hearing of a negative reason to live in Canada, so this is...
Oh man, but I want like one of those spaghetti and meatballs with a meatball the size of a softball. Like that's why America is great. That's
Shout
why
out
I like
to
it.
Excess, man. It's always good.
But yeah. Oh man.
Yeah, I am of course CL Foster. You can find me on Twitter at Travis L Foster. You can follow the show at Poolhouse Live on Twitter. I don't have anything to promote. Again, I am holding myself accountable. I am writing a script for a rom-com that's gonna be not what you think. Like there's not a meat. It's a whole thing. I'll talk about it more once I actually have the first draft done. That'll be more important. But yeah, like Emmit, I'm working on other stuff that I want to talk about soon. I have a really cool. I can actually start talking about this now. By the time this comes out, I would have put down the groundwork. I have a really cool podcast idea that I am working on, that I'm going to be doing, that is going to be more like a serial or what's what I've been watching? Slow burn. That's what I've been watching. More like slow burn, and it has to do with gaming, the gaming industry, like history. Because I'm a huge fan of like old magazines. I'm a huge fan of like old reviews and stuff like that. So I'm actually working on a podcast to kind of talk about the history for it. And I'm going to be reaching out to the people. If I can't get anybody to do it, that's fine. I will just say what I will say in one of the Patreon episodes or on PNB. But it's a really cool idea that I want to do, that I've been kicking my mind to do, and it's probably going to start me doing a lot more. I want to do a lot more of these short burst, like short run, like history podcasts, because there's so many things I want to talk to people about. Like I do want to talk about, like I tell people all the time, like I'm a second generation gamer. Like that's something that's always wild to people, and it's like my mom, like my mom and my stepdad talked about it. Like when they started dating, they would like miss PT because they would stay in their barracks playing the NES. And it's like, I'm like, of course you were. Like, duh. Like, do you know who I am? But like when my mom was pregnant with me, she was playing Zelda. Like, and that's her connection. Wow. Like, that's her connection to Zelda. So like, it's, to me, that's always, it is weird. And I there's so many things that you can look at, like, because we don't promote black women in gaming spaces. But like, whenever people say that to me, it's always weird because I'm like, but that's all I know. My dad was not a gamer. My dad doesn't play video games. My mom, my sister, and both my sisters do. Like that's who the other people who played. My youngest sister is the one I watched her beat Ocarina of Time. So like that has always been so weird to me. Like that whole dichotomy of like, oh, girls don't game. It's like, well, no, they do, and black women definitely do game because. Here, like I've seen it. Like, so I definitely want to do more stuff like on that, because I think, especially in the podcast space, and I know I'm going longer on the ending, but I'm just going to get my thoughts out there.
Hey, your show, your rules.
I haven't been able to. But I think it's very important to highlight diverse voices, especially when people have the inverse look of, well, this person doesn't do X, when I guarantee you can find it. And that's my thing. I had this conversation talking about the old gaming magazines, because I remember how I felt picking up the gaming magazine I want to talk about for the first time. Excuse me. I wanted to talk about women in gaming, because I think that's very important, because they've been very important in gaming, and not just white women, like a lot of women of color. There's just so many great things. There are communities I want to talk about, because community scenes are what it is. I love the FGC. There's so many things I want to talk about the FGC. So there's so many podcast ideas I have that are short form. I want to really start working with that, and the one that I'm working on that I will talk about as soon as I get the okay with everybody. That's going to be the catalyst. That's going to be the key. And I think that's one of the things I'm super excited about doing.
DOP.
Oh, that's cool to hear.
All right. So after that whole diatribe, I again want to thank Emmit so much for joining us on here. So for Emmit, for Sonya, I am TL Foster. This has been live from the Poolhouse. Don't get thrown out like Jack.